Hello all, and welcome back to Puzzle Street Ladder. Today we start at 35 with 1883 rated puzzle. So this one, um, I see a couple of options. We can give this check on b5, um, and I believe black's only move is to actually go to f7 because if he does block with the bishop, we have queen takes h5, and that is checkmate. Because of the bishop blocking d8. So um, that seems promising. If queen to b5 check, king can actually step over to f7, and the only check we have available at that point is to take on h5. Um, let's assume king goes to g7 because if he goes to g8, we continue giving checks on g6 and h5, etc. So let's assume the most critical move, king to g7, and I noticed there that we don't have any checks, any good checks, because if the rook swings over to g3, I believe black can actually just sacrifice his queen. After king takes, he takes our rook, our bishop, and I believe he has more than enough compensation. Rook, bishop, and bishop against the queen, and we won't be down a pawn in that variation. I actually, but um, yeah, it's still equal pawns against each other, and our pawns are split up, so I don't think they'll be causing black much trouble, whereas black's pawns would be connected. So yes, that does seem to throw a wrench in our plans. So just to repeat the line, queen to b5 check, king to f7, queen takes h5, king to g7, rook to g3, queen takes g3, king takes g3, and rook takes c7. Um, so yes, I believe that is the refutation. So queen b5 will not be working. The other checks in position are queen to g6 check and queen to h5 check. Um, and when we play queen to g6 check, I believe that leads nowhere actually because the bishop can block and we don't have any good checks after that. Whereas if we take on h5 and then the bishop blocks, I notice that we can make use of this b5 square again. Kind of shuffling between these two on the fifth rank. So queen takes h5, bishop blocks, and then queen b5 is actually checkmate. So therefore, queen h5, king to e7. Then I notice that queen to b5 is actually still checkmate. It's quite an unusual checkmate, but this bishop does a good job controlling these two squares. And, you know, black's pieces are really inconvenient to the black king. Wants to escape to the e file, but he has no avenue. So, yes, I believe this is just a mate in two. So let's go ahead and play it. Queen h5. I don't see a mate in one here, obviously. So queen h5 does block, and now we have queen b5 as checkmate. Would be a bit more challenging if he played king d7, but I'm not going to complain. Okay, here we have an endgame puzzle, and it's equal material as of right now. Um, really moving the rook from its attack over here doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I believe maybe e5 or maybe just a4. It doesn't make that much sense. Hmm. What happens if we take the rook? Pawn takes. And is there a way to hunt down this pawn? If he immediately starts pushing, let's say white plays some move. If he immediately starts pushing, we can catch it really easily. So we really don't have to be worried about this pawn running really quickly, unless the king maybe comes over to guard it. So you can take the rook, the pawn takes. We play f5, I believe, over there, trying to induce pawn takes. But at that point, if pawn takes, can't actually take back. Mm, or can we? Let's recalculate. Rook takes b4, a takes b4, f5, pawn takes, check, king takes. But then yeah, he runs, and I believe our king is definitely not in time. Yep, we're one step behind. So therefore, what can we do here? If rook takes, pawn takes, what if we step forward over here? And I believe that actually forces king c6 because because he is lost a pawn otherwise. But then actually I see that we have king c4, and there's no way for him to defend this pawn. He can't get to b5. And after we win that pawn, I mean, it should be smooth sailing. Yeah, I think that is the answer. Anything else? Any other tricks? Rook takes, pawn takes, king to d3. What if he pushes e5? I believe we don't take with the pawn at that point because then he gets a pass pawn on his own on the f file. So maybe just d takes, pawn takes, and I don't really think we have to be worried because after pawn takes, if then he plays king to c6, um, at that point we play king to c4, and this pawn's actually defended. But if he pushes that pawn at that point, pawn to b3, we take, he takes, and hmm, he might be able to hunt down the sole remaining pawn on e5 then. Okay, that is a slight problem, maybe. Does inserting a check help at all? I don't think so. That just gets his king closer, and then this pawn is vulnerable. Rook takes, pawn takes, d5 can't be good there. If he takes and now king takes, then his pawn runs. So therefore, king d3 must be the correct answer over there. I'm just a bit worried about e5. But now I think I do see a solution. Maybe pawn takes, pawn to f5, d5 at that point. Mhm. Really, I think the only correct answer here is rook takes b4. So I'm probably just going to play that just so it can help me calculate a bit better. Let's try that. That is the correct answer. So over here is a critical decision. Let's see, king to d3, then e5. I mean, we have to take with the d pawn there. I don't see anything else. He takes f takes, then f takes, and the problem is king to c6. But then I actually do see maybe just e6 at that point. Yeah, because like we still not in trouble because of this pawn running too fast. Our king can easily catch it. So after e6, um, black can't actually take this pawn because then that the e pawn runs really quickly, and black won't be able to catch it. I think that is the correct answer. So just to recap, um, king to d3, e5, d takes, f takes, f takes. So currently we have a pawn here, the king here, the black pawn here, and the black king here. We don't have to worry about this pawn. King to c6 at that point. Yes, at that point, e6 should win. I think that is correct answer. I mean, I don't really see anything else in this position. Pushing the pawn, pushing any of the pawns is bad, and moving the king obviously away from the pawn, away from the b pawn is bad. So yes, we have to play this. Okay, now at this point, I think e5 would have been more challenging. King here, we can just play here, and we've taken care of everything. So yes, we take pawn now, obviously, and we solve the puzzle. So just going back, I really think e5 is more challenging move. Or e5 takes, takes, king here. Yes, e6 is the correct answer at that point. I really think they should have made us find all those moves because king here is actually just an automatic draw because of this. Yes, that is a really good puzzle. Um, a very useful exercise in pawn endgame calculation. So yes, let's move on to the next one. And we get another endgame puzzle, and this one is not nearly as difficult. This one is just a standard endgame. When um, against a light square bishop, it's important we don't push um, h6 here in this case because if we push h6, this bishop gets a free kind of hold on both of these pawns, and then we're just like um, we're just going to be waiting around doing nothing with our king. So therefore, the only other move that makes sense is g6. Moving the king anywhere, it doesn't really help. So yes, g6. He goes to e6. Um, but over here, I believe we just push this pawn and then we push here, threatening to queen. And really, if we push here and the bishop goes back, we push to h7 again, and he's going to have to give up his bishop, after which we can take and then promote the next move. So that is a straightforward win. This is a pretty standard pawns versus bishop win. So you can just play that. He attacks the pawn, but we don't have to worry about that. We play this and then we promote the next move. Okay. Um, this one, it looks like there's this massive pawn in white side. Um, taking obviously it just doesn't make sense. That helps white, if not anything. Um, there are no good checks that I see. Our king is relatively safe. So therefore, in terms of captures, basically this pawn is advanced enough to where we can maybe start planning for f2, given that the rook also supports it, but first we need this pawn out of the way first. The way to do that is to take the knight, either with the queen or the bishop. So if the queen takes, we're actually threatening some pretty bad stuff at that point. So he has to take back. Then we push to f2 check. Then the queen gives itself up. After we take back, king takes back. It's two rooks versus two minors. So the only other option must be bishop takes g3. We're not threatening anything immediately, I believe, um, given that the queen is blocked from seeing g2. But at the same time, this is where considering the safety of our king comes into play. Because bishop takes g3, um, white doesn't actually have any good threatening checks. Even if he does give a check over here, we can actually go back with the bishop. And the situation gets really bad for white at that point because the bishop would be attacking the queen as well as the queen threatening checkmate. And after g3, we still threaten checkmate with queen h3, threatening checkmate on g2. So bishop takes. He doesn't have any good checks, so we might as well take. After which we can actually push, and we're either going to be winning the rook or we're going to be winning the queen after it gives itself up. I believe that is the right answer. Um, I don't see anything else. Taking the pawn obviously is um, just a complete waste of time. This has to be a winning tactic. So bishop takes knight. That is correct. And now we push. White gives up the queen, and now we take it. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff going on over here. King's attacking the bishop, our rook's attacking their rook, and their rook's attacking our rook. Um, hmm. First thing really I notice is this rook's just hanging. Then he takes our rook. Mm, it's also this bishop attacking the rook. So what do we do here? What if we try and give away? Because I don't think I see any good checks here. Or maybe there is the possibility of, I guess, rook to f3. That does look a little bit promising. Because it actually defends the bishop and it removes the rook from attack. And it also comes with the added bonus of being a check, obviously. So he still has to reckon with rook takes on d1. So after we give a check, this rook is out of the way, and this rook is also out of the way of the bishop. So then he has to move the king, and he can't actually move his king anywhere to where he can defend the other rook on d1. So yes, I believe that is just a straight up free rook. Again, you should look at your forcing moves. I did manage to miss it at first, but just looking at your options, seeing that this rook is the critical piece and it's what we have to defend, just comes automatically. So yes, rook to f3. He does block with the rook, which I guess was an option that I didn't explain, but we can take the rook with check, after which we can take the rook on d1, and we are up in exchange. So yes, we've reached puzzle number 40, and we're on a rating again of 1759, but I believe we had a 1900 rated puzzle in there. So yes, that second puzzle, I believe, was a really good exercise in pawn endgame visualization. And yeah, hope you got something out of it. See you in the next video.